The story of Esther, a brave queen who saved her people. A long time ago, in a great kingdom called Persia, there was a powerful king named Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes. He ruled over 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia. He was one of the most powerful kings of his time. One day, King Ahasuerus decided to throw a grand feast for all the important people in his kingdom. The feast lasted for 180 days, that's half a year. After that, he had another feast that lasted 7 days just for the people in the capital city of Shushan. During this time, the king's wife, Queen Vashti, also held a feast for the women of the palace. On the 7th day of the feast, the king, who had been drinking wine, wanted to show off Queen Vashti's beauty to his guests. He sent his servants to bring her, but Queen Vashti refused to come. This made the king very angry. He asked his advisors what he should do, and they told him that if the queen was allowed to disobey him, other women in the kingdom might also start disrespecting their husbands. So, they suggested that he remove Queen Vashti from being queen and find a new queen instead. The king agreed and made a law that Vashti would never be allowed to come before him again. After some time, the king's advisors suggested a beauty contest to find a new queen. The most beautiful young women from all over the kingdom were brought to the palace. Among them was a young Jewish girl named Esther. Esther was an orphan who had been raised by her cousin Mordecai. She was very beautiful, kind, and wise. But Mordecai told her not to tell anyone that she was Jewish because it might put her in danger. Before meeting the king, each girl was given special beauty treatments for 12 months. When it was Esther's turn to go before the king, he was so pleased with her that he made her the new queen. Meanwhile, Mordecai, who worked at the palace gate, overheard 2 of the king's officers plotting to kill the king. He quickly told Esther, and she informed the king in Mordecai's name. The plot was stopped, and the king's scribes wrote down Mordecai's good deed in the royal records. However, Mordecai was not rewarded at that time. A man named Haman was the highest official in the kingdom, second only to the king. The king ordered everyone to bow down and show respect to Haman, but Mordecai refused. He said he would not bow because he was Jewish and only worshipped God. This made Haman furious. Instead of punishing only Mordecai, Haman decided to destroy all the Jews in the kingdom. He tricked the king into signing a law that on a certain day, all Jews could be killed, and their property taken. The king did not realize that Queen Esther was also Jewish. When Mordecai heard about the new law, he and all the Jews put on sackcloth and ashes, a sign of mourning, and cried out to God for help. He sent a message to Esther, urging her to go to the king and beg for her people's lives. Esther was afraid. In those days, no one could go to the king unless he invited them. If someone entered the king's court without permission, they could be killed unless the king held out his golden scepter. Mordecai sent her a message: if you remain silent, help will come from another place. But you and your family will perish. Who knows? Maybe you became queen for such a time as this. After thinking about it, Esther replied, tell all the Jews to fast and pray for 3 days. I and my maids will also fast. Then I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in her finest royal robes and stood in the inner court. The king saw her and held out his golden scepter, meaning she was safe. He asked, what do you want, Queen Esther? Even up to half my kingdom, I will give it to you. But Esther did not ask for her people's lives immediately. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. The king agreed, and Haman was pleased to be invited. That night, as Haman walked home, he saw Mordecai at the gate again, and Mordecai still refused to bow to him. This made him so angry that he built a huge gallows, a wooden structure for hanging people, to execute Mordecai. That night, the king could not sleep. He asked his servants to read the royal records to him. They read the part where Mordecai had saved his life by reporting the 2 officers who plotted against him. The king asked, "Did we ever reward Mordecai for this?" The servants said no. The next morning, the king asked Haman, "What should be done for a man the king wants to honor?" Haman thought the king was talking about him, so he said, "Dress him in the king's robe, put him on the king's horse, and let a nobleman lead him through the city, shouting, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" The king said, "Great idea. Now go and do this for Mordecai." Haman was humiliated, but he had no choice. That evening, at the second banquet, the king asked Esther again what she wanted. Finally, she said, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, please spare my life and the lives of my people. We are to be destroyed by a wicked man." The king was shocked. "Who is this man?" he asked. Esther pointed at Haman and said, "This wicked Haman is our enemy." Inspired, Esther resolved to act, saying, "If I perish, I perish." She called for a 3-day fast before approaching the king. After 3 days of fasting, Esther courageously entered the king's court. Ahasuerus welcomed her and offered her anything she desired, even up to half his kingdom. Instead of making her request immediately, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. During the banquet, the king asked Esther what she wanted. Again, she postponed her request, inviting them to a second banquet the next day. Meanwhile, Haman was filled with rage upon seeing Mordecai. At his wife's suggestion, he built a gallows 75 feet high to hang Mordecai. That night, the king suffered from insomnia and ordered the royal chronicles to be read. He discovered that Mordecai had previously uncovered a plot against him but was never rewarded. When Haman arrived the next morning, intending to request Mordecai's execution, the king asked him how to honor a great man. Assuming the honor was for himself, Haman suggested a royal parade. To his shock, the king commanded him to bestow this honor upon Mordecai. Haman obeyed but returned home humiliated. At the second banquet, the king again asked Esther for her request. She revealed Haman's plot, saying, "If we had merely been sold as slaves, I would have remained silent. But we are to be destroyed." The king, enraged, demanded to know the perpetrator. Esther identified Haman. In terror, Haman fell onto Esther's couch, pleading for mercy. The king misinterpreted this as an assault and ordered Haman to be executed on the gallows he had built for Mordecai. Though Haman was dead, his decree could not be revoked. However, the king allowed Esther and Mordecai to issue a counter-decree, granting Jews the right to defend themselves. On the 13th of Adar, they defeated their enemies. Mordecai was promoted, and a festival was established to celebrate their deliverance. This festival, known as Purim, is still observed by Jews today. Go.